Hey everybody, Robin Ivy here. How's everybody doing? In Rhode Island, it's a cold and rainy, kind of gross Sunday. But I decided to show up today and share with you guys this new project that I've just created, and I'm super excited about it. Bear with me because it's kind of a divergence from what I normally do. But here's the story. So my dad was a Methodist minister. He actually was born in Texas and was either a Southern Baptist minister or just Baptist. I can never remember. Anyway, so he was like a 6'4" Texas pastor, had a booming voice, and he preached every Sunday for like 40 years, a sermon every week, right? So like 20 minutes, sort of like a pastor's TED Talk once a week. Well, I left home when I was about 15. So from the time I was from 15 on, I wasn't in church to listen to my dad's sermons. And probably from like 0 to 8 or 9, I always went to like Sunday school or like kids' church. So truth be told, there was probably only a window of about 5 years where I was really watching or listening to my dad preach. And back then, I'm sure I wasn't paying any attention. So I got this idea a little while ago that it would be really interesting. It occurred to me that all of my dad's sermons were like sitting in a box in my mom's house. And my dad passed away 10 years ago from Alzheimer's. So his sermons are really, I felt like they would be these cool breadcrumbs for me to follow backwards, to be able to kind of get to know my dad, get to understand him better as a man, as a husband, as a father, but also as a person of God and a person of faith, and to kind of understand what his own journey was as he grew up, because he grew up as a pastor. So I thought that would be kind of a cool thing to watch, how he expanded in his faith, how his mindset changed. I've been thinking so much for myself in the past year a lot about inner leadership and the things I'm doing to live a life more led by my inner leader, and what it means to be a leader in the world, both in myself, both in my family, in my community, in my career. And I thought it would be cool to really understand what it was like for him to be a leader. So anyway, so I decided during this, viral apocalypse, that I would put this to good use, and I decided to start a Patreon, and it's a project called Milkshakes from Heaven, because whenever my dad had something difficult he wanted to talk to me about, he would always take me out for a milkshake, which then really just became this kind of funny flag that I knew like something kind of important was coming. But regardless, so when he had something difficult to talk about, he'd take me out for a milkshake. So I decided to call it Milkshakes from Heaven. It's over on Patreon. My plan is that I'm gonna read one of his sermons each week. So every month there'll be at least 4. And then I'll kind of deconstruct and reflect upon the sermon, because there's a lot of messages. I'm really spiritual, but not particularly religious. So I come from a little bit of a different background, or at least like look at faith through a little bit of a different lens. My dad was very religious and also very private in his faith. So some of the dogma and the words and the language he uses is far more Christian based than what I use in my own life. But I actually think that makes it that much more interesting. Excuse me, water break. So anyway, so I'll share a link down below if you guys are interested. Like I said, my plan is once a week I'll read a sermon, I'll reflect on it. Sometimes they're really funny. The coolest part about this whole project so far, honestly, even like when I first got the box of sermons, they rolled over in my car, and when I uprighted them to bring them in my own house, the first sermon on the top said like, coming at you from the courtesy of God. When I tell you the number of like synchronicities and serendipitous moments that have happened, everything from my son telling me a story, then me reading a sermon from my dad that same evening, and his sermon having the exact same story my son read, that like there's been times where I've reached out and called a friend about something, and the same day heard the story that my dad was telling me reflected in some part. It's all been like kind of a magic mystery ride, and it almost feels like these sermons are a strange way that my dad's communicating with me about stuff right now. So anyway, so I'll put a link below. It's over on Patreon. It's called Milkshakes from Heaven. I'll be reading these sermons of my dad's. They're really interesting messages of like hope, faith, upliftment, inspiration, and like how to just live a good life and be a good person, basically. Which in a moment like this, I feel like who doesn't need a little inspiration, upliftment, and to be reminded of what it means to be a good human, right? All right, so I'm so excited. I hope you guys will check it out. Yeah, all right. Hope you're enjoying this Sunday. Talk to you soon.